really is. This is my first time. This is my first time. This is my first time speaking. And which is funny because this is where my family started. This is my family started a relationship with community. My son was baptized right there. And thank you, person. And then we went and we launched, helped on the team that launched Lamont, so we've been there. But this is where I live. I mean, this is my community, you're my neighbors. I recognize many people in the room. You have a package at the desk, by the way. So it's just really exciting for me to be here. I'm very happy that Josh has let me do this, and I hope it happens again. We'll see. So, like Josh said, we're concluding, we're saying goodbye to the Lake Effect today. I think what I'm going to miss most is the intro. It's really mellow. Makes me feel like there's a cooking show coming. So we're concluding that. And what we've been doing is we've been looking at these key moments in Jesus' ministry that centered around the Sea of Galilee. And specifically the interactions that he had with his followers. And what we're doing, and we're hoping to do with these stories, is discover what is it that we can learn about our own relationship with God through these interactions. So the final story that we're looking at today is not actually a story at all. It's a warning that Jesus gave. And he gave it to his followers, and so by extension, he gave it to us. And what we're doing, we're going to look at the book of Matthew. It's chapter 16, 6 through 12. Matthew was a disciple of Jesus. He was his follower. He was also his friend. And so he wrote this book. And so when you read the book of Matthew, you're seeing Jesus through the eyes of Matthew. It's the way Matthew saw him. It's the way Matthew experienced him. So are you ready? Here's the warning. Beware the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Let that sink for a second. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, I know it's church, and I know these are Jesus' words, but I find that funny. I really do find that funny, because it's so incredibly specific, right? It's like as if Jesus said, okay, beware of the Taco Bell on 75th and Ricker, you know? Which, by the way, beware of the Taco Bell on 75th and Ricker. I got something, it was evil. I got something evil from that. So seriously, beware of that place. But so many of Jesus' statements sort of stand on their own, you know? I am the light of the world. Okay. I am the vine, you are the branches. Okay. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Nobody's using that as their daily inspirational quote on Facebook. You know? Nobody's putting that up there. But the thing is that it really is an inspirational quote from Jesus. It is. It doesn't look like it. I mean, at first blush we read that and we're like, now how could that possibly apply to my life? I have no idea, and I get that. But I really do believe that this warning is about the single most important thing in all of our lives. So stick with me for a few minutes and try to hear what Jesus is communicating with these words, because it's absolutely critical. And it's okay. It's okay if you read those and it's a little bit confusing, because Jesus' disciples were confused by these words too. So let me give you a little context for why he said this. Jesus had been moving around the Sea of Galilee. He'd been teaching. He'd been healing. He'd been performing miracles. Huge miracles. And then one day he was confronted by the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And what they did is that they demanded of Jesus, right here, right now, perform a miracle. Prove your authority. And that irritated Jesus. It irritated him. He didn't do it. He refused. And he called them an evil and adulterous generation. And then he dropped the mic. And he walked away. Now, it would have been absolutely cool if he dropped the mic and he had walked away on water. That would have been awesome. He did not do that, though. He did not. Jesus restrained himself. He pulled back a little bit. So that brings us up to the point where we're talking about today. And so it goes like this. So, later, after Jesus and the disciples crossed to the other side of the lake in a boat, sadly, the disciples discovered that they had forgotten to bring any bread. "Watch out," Jesus warned them. "Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." At this, they began to argue with each other because they hadn't bought any bread. The disciples had no idea what he was talking about. Now, of course, yeast is the thing that we put in bread. It makes the loaf rise. So they hear Jesus mention yeast, and so they assume that he's looking for some bread, which they didn't have. So they start arguing, like, "Why did you bring any bread? I didn't bring the bread. You didn't bring the bread. I didn't forget the bread. You forgot the bread." And they're arguing, and Jesus is like, guys, I'm not worried about bread. Do you remember that time that I fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves? You remember? Or do you remember the other time when I fed 4,000 people with 7 loaves? Do you remember? That was yesterday. I'm not worried about bread. Relax. This is what I really love about the interaction between Jesus and the disciples right here, because this is written by Matthew. He's one of the guys. He's one of the guys that Jesus is going about. If I was Matthew, I would have been tempted to sanitize some of my interactions with Jesus, especially the ones where I kind of, exasperating Jesus. I always have pictured, maybe you're like me, I've always pictured Jesus as being incredibly patient. In fact, I'm actually counting on Jesus being incredibly patient, but there had to be times where he just wanted to shake these guys. Like, seriously. It's all the time. I talk in metaphors all the time. You should just expect it. Just expect it. So he comes back and he doesn't shake them. He stays Jesus. He doesn't shake them, but he repeats his warning. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And then it hits them. It hits them. Jesus is warning about the teachings of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Because the thing about yeast is that it only takes a little bit. It only takes a little bit to make the bread rise. It affects everything. And Jesus is saying, watch out for these guys. Watch out for what they're spreading, because their ideas are dangerous, and it only takes a little bit to mess it all up. Be on guard. Beware of them. Now, to get the importance of this warning, we need to get up to speed on what the Pharisees and the Sadducees were actually teaching. Now, to the disciples, they already knew. These guys were the prominent teachers of their time. They already knew what these guys were about. The Pharisees, they taught that in order to be okay with God, you had to work. You had to work really, 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 really hard. Their approach to righteousness was kind of like this. They had 613 rules to follow in order to be right with God. 248 things that you needed to do, and 365 things that you are not supposed to do. 613 things. The Pharisees taught that if you wanted to be okay with God, you had to work, you had to earn it, no pain, no gain. That's stairmaster spirituality. Now Jesus, he lumps these two groups of people together, the Pharisees and the Sadducees together, in this warning, even though these guys were almost constantly at odds with one another. They didn't really agree on very much, except that they did not like Jesus. That was the one thing that they could get together on. Now we know less about the Sadducees. They actually lost that debate. They kind of disappeared. So really all we know about them is what the Pharisees were. So it was not really very kind. But we do know that they didn't want to submit to the 613 rules that the Pharisees had interpreted. They would only recognize the rules that were in the Bible. Now that sounds good, right? That sounds like what you're supposed to do. But the reason for this is they wanted those rules as vague as possible so they could interpret it for themselves, so each one of them could decide for themselves what they meant, so that they could follow their own way. And it's so easy to fall into the Sadducee spirituality. It's really, really, really tempting, right? It's really tempting to define for yourself what it means to be okay with God. And loads of people, think about this. They say, as long as you believe in God, and you do some religious-y type things, and you don't intentionally hurt anyone, then everything's fine. We've met the minimum requirements of goodness that obligates God to respond in kind. If the Pharisees taught kind of a stairmaster spirituality, the Sadducee spirituality is more like this: a lounge chair. And lounge chair spirituality says, I'm okay, you're okay. Lounge chair spirituality says, we're all basically good people, just no worries, Let's all continue to meet our own individual understanding of the standards of goodness, and then we'll all just meet up in heaven later. That's lounge chair spirituality. And Jesus warns his followers of both schools. He warns them of both schools in the same breath, because as different as they appear in practice, they share an essential trait. Both teach that what matters to God is you being good enough. One group has a really, really stringent criteria of what being good enough means, and the other is kind of liberal about it. But the bottom line is the same: a spirituality based on being good enough for God. And Jesus warns his followers then, and he warns us now about this kind of spirituality of being good enough. I've known so many people who think following God is a stairmaster kind of thing, or a lounge chair kind of thing. And it's kept them from embracing the single most important thing in their life. And even when we do embrace that single most important thing in our life, that stairmaster mentality or that lounge chair mentality, it sucks us back in. I know this from experience. The stairmaster people we know, they may not have 613 rules, but what they do have is an unspoken belief that when it comes to God, he's a demanding boss. Being good enough for him is hard work. Stairmaster spirituality, it's all black and white. You've got an ultimate to-do list, and you've got an even more ultimate to-don't list. And you need to diligently work those lists in order to earn your stairway to heaven. So you vacillate between two states of being. And they're dominated by the desire to impress God, and then racked with guilt because you know you don't measure up. You've missed that mark of holy excellence. That's a stress-filled way to be. That feeling that you're never really good enough for God. That there's always something more that you ought to be doing. And maybe you know this. Maybe all of your life, even after you became a Christ follower, you never quite have been able to get out from under that sense of drivenness and then guilt. And you worry over a list of all the things that you should have been doing and all those things that you shouldn't have been doing. And it's exhausting because you know it's never going to be enough. You're never going to be able to do enough. And maybe you don't relate to that. Maybe that's not good. Maybe you don't relate to that. Maybe you lean more towards that lounge chair. It's just as insidious. It's just as dangerous. I mean, plenty of people, I'm one of them, whose modern day equivalent of a lounge chair approach to God is what they hold. I mean, how many times have you uttered the words, well, I'm only human. Nobody's perfect. As long as I'm not hurting anybody, I'm basically a good person. Lounge chair spirituality tells me that God is only concerned about some of my sins. And probably not the ones that I'm committing, Because nobody's perfect. That's my tendency. I rationalize my sins. I have a perfectly reasonable excuse for most of them. I minimize them. And the problem with this kind of spirituality is that not only it has nothing to do with Jesus, it has nothing to do with what he taught, it also robs us of ever fully knowing our need for God's forgiveness. And so lounge chair people, they never get to know the deep gratitude that comes from knowing that they're forgiven. Because we're convinced that just by being us, just by being ourselves and meeting what we've decided are the minimal standards for goodness, that we're good enough. Jesus taught that an authentic relationship with God is never about being good enough. We can't hear this too many times. Jesus taught that an authentic relationship with God starts with the realization that I'm spiritually busted, I'm bankrupt, and that I can't fix that on my own. I can't work my way out of it, and I can't ignore it. Jesus came to show both the Stairmaster people and the lounge chair people that there's a better way. In fact, there's the only way. Earlier, I said that this warning was all about the single most important thing in all of your life. And that wasn't hyperbole. I wasn't exaggerating. Because the single most important thing in all of our lives is grace. Amen? Amen. So we have to get this. We have to get this grace. We have to get that what Jesus is trying to teach each and every one of us is that we need to base our whole lives on the grace of God. The free, unmerited grace of God. Jesus knew that the Stairmaster people, they missed the boat. They missed the boat because they were always trying to fix their relationship with God. And the lounge chair people, they missed the boat too because they believed that there's really nothing to be fixed. The grace of God says that no matter how good I am, how good I'm not, I can find love and acceptance because of the mercy and the forgiveness offered to me through Jesus. God's saying, you can't achieve right relationship with me through your goodness. You can't do it. You receive righteousness because of my goodness. Never, 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 never base your life on anything but the grace of God. All of us need this warning. Never base your life on anything but the grace of God. See, I think it's one thing. It's one thing to understand the concept of the spiritual concept of grace. It's a whole nother thing to base your entire life on that. Anyone here today who's either tired of being good enough for God or afraid that you'll never be good enough for God, I want you to hear these words from Jesus. I want you to hear them. Maybe you've read them before. Maybe you've heard them spoken to you. But I want you to hear them like you've never heard them before. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. I read a story once about a priest in a third world country. And there was a woman in his village who was claiming that she was having face-to-face conversations with Jesus. And this priest was just a little bit skeptical of her authenticity. So he asks her for a meeting. He does an interview with her. And in that meeting, he asks her, looks directly in her eyes and says, "Is this true?" She looks directly into his eyes and says, "Yes, it is." And he's like, "Okay then. Next time you talk to Jesus, ask him about the sin that I committed when I was in seminary." See, now this is a test, partly. It was partly a test, but it was also a genuine question. Because when he was in seminary, he had committed a sin and nobody knew about it. Nobody knew about it, but he could never get over it. No matter what he did, no matter all the good deeds that he did, all the things that he said he was doing for God, he never felt like he could fill that hole that he created. And so the woman agreed. And a few weeks later, she comes back. And he says, "Well, so, have any conversations with Jesus lately?" And she's like, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I did." And he says, "And did you ask him about that sin that I committed back in seminary?" She says, "Yes, I did." And thinking that he had cornered her, he said, "Well, what did Jesus say?" And she said, "He said he doesn't remember." That's our God. That's the God that we love. That's the God that we serve. That's the God whose grace that we depend on. No Stairmaster necessary. It doesn't lead anywhere. Accept his grace. Live out of that grace. That's all you need. And to the lounge chair people, God says this: we all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Come now, let us settle the matter, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they will be as white as snow. Though they are red as crimson, they shall be like wool. Lounge chair people, can you hear Jesus saying, enough of this nobody's perfect stuff? Enough of this hollow self-congratulation about basically being a good person? He says, come clean with me. Come clean with me about your need for forgiveness. Lay down your sins, all your flaws, all your insecurities, and I will take them on myself. That's our God. There's another story that I like. It's about a king who decides he's going to go visit a prison. And the rumor going around among the prisoners is that he's there to pardon somebody. And so as he's going from cell to cell, speaking to each inmate, each one of them tells him the same story. I'm innocent. I don't really belong here. It was a mistake. I deserve to be set free. Every prisoner said that, except one. And this one said to the king, I'm here because I did what they said I did. But even if I didn't do that thing, I did plenty more that I never got caught for. There are so many things that I was never held accountable for. I wish I could say that I didn't belong here, but I do. I wish I could say that I deserve a pardon, but I